Right. I'm going to share my screen.
Showtime.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start our PowerPoint.
We have people joining, so let's give everybody a minute to join.
Well, I think I should still.
Everybody has time to join. Numbers are slowly going up.
I'm going to go ahead and do this. You all see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Come on, there it goes.
Let's
Okay.
give everybody another couple of minutes because it's still before 7.
Yep.
If you
No,
don't
no
mind,
problem.
because
I
we
don't-
still have numbers going up of the number of people participating.
Fabulous. Yes, I sent it to.
Carolyn says, hi, Sonia, Lonnie, and Lisa.
Mhm.
Awesome.
And everyone else.
Oh, wow. 24 already. Good.
Hi, Carolyn. So glad you could join us. We are waiting right now for people to join. It is not quite 7 o'clock. I hope you can hear us, Colette. We are waiting for more people to join and give it just about a minute after 7 for everyone to be on. I feel like we should have music going.
Now, what we need to put is Henry's popcorn song.
Yes, there you go.
Oh, next time I'll ask Henry the name of it and try to figure out how to do that. I'll
That
get
would be
fancy and
great.
try to add music.
The wake up music,
Yep.
reveille.
It
Yeah.
was pretty awesome for when we had the Red and Tie Championships there, like in 2017. Courtney Kruger did a really awesome video of the whole competition with all the pictures and videos that people sent in, and so he started in the morning with the sun coming up and with Henry's music, and it's amazing how it hits you every time you hear that. It's pretty cool.
Karen Neuenschwander said that she was playing the music at her house back over in Texas, and her boys were running around the house screaming, "No, no!" I thought, well, that was cute.
You got PTS from hot buttered popcorn, huh?
Exactly. What I will do is I will see. I will challenge myself and see about adding music. Not, I'll just put it on my phone and put it up here.
All right, we are a minute
It's not an
after.
OD ride without it.
Yeah, true.
That is very true.
I bet you could put that as a ringtone on your phone.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Can make it the tone for all the OD board members.
Yes.
Hi,
Oh,
Haley.
that would be Lenny calling.
Don't answer.
We still have a lot of people trickling in, actually.
One person's raised their hand. Dave has raised his hand. Dave,
Hey,
do you have a
Dave.
question? Dave Franklin?
Oh, hi,
Or
Dave.
is he just waving?
Oh,
Oh.
just saying hi. Hi.
Go, Dave. I think while we're waiting, right. I think while we're waiting for 7 o'clock to hit, we should tell people what an amazing day we had last Saturday and how much was done on base camp.
Oh, I think that Lonnie, talk about it then. Go for it.
So Diane organized this, but we had a ton of people,
Okay,
and then
Lonnie, let me cut in. I don't
yes,
think
please.
you can hear us.
No, we-
Carolyn asked, should we be hearing you talking?
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Hi.
and Colette asked, should we be hearing anything? And
Uh-oh.
can anybody hear us
Okay,
talking?
we're
Oh, we
getting-
hear you.
We
Okay,
get you.
yep, Thank
good.
you. Okay,
Loud
very
and
good.
clear.
But Diane, you are definitely cutting in and out.
That's
Yeah, we
Diane.
have-
Got his-
Get up here.
Go
Okay,
ahead,
well, you
Lonnie,
want
go
to,
ahead.
Lonnie, go ahead
Yeah,
about
well,
Base
just
Camp. We have-
in brief, because we're going to get started, but Susan Trader organizes us by making a big poster board of all the jobs we had to do, and there were 50 or 70 jobs to do, including planting flowers around the pump house. And the most amazing things that happened was that Bob and Janice and Dave Franklin built a permanent pen for the raffle horse, because whenever the raffle horse comes every year to the Old Dominion, we have to bring corral panels and set it up and things like that. So now they've put up just this totally awesome permanent round pen for the raffle horse. But everybody brought their zero turns, and we did a lot of mowing and weed eating and trail clearing and water bar making. And it was just a super, super day, and the place looks amazing.
Stop. That's not nice. Lay down.
Okay. What do we think? Are we ready to?
I think
I
we're
think we
ready
should
to
jump
rock
right
and
in.
roll. Yep.
Okay, so numbers look like they've steadied out a bit. Okay, so everyone, welcome to our webinar. This is the one right before the Old Dominion ride. We've got less than a month away. We've done a lot of different webinars, getting you ready, getting questions, and our last one with the expert panelists, that was really fun. But now we wanted, maybe you have some lingering questions about the Old Dominion. And so we wanted to present an opportunity that you could ask your own questions. And also we'll present some information too that I think you'll find useful. And I will let you know, we've been all suffering some technology issues. So the fact that this is up here and I think it's going to work makes me really excited. So again, yay, it went forward. Again, we have the same people that was our other webinars that we've done. We have Lonnie and Terry, Diane, and myself, and there you have our email addresses if you have any questions, and a brief bio of all of us. And then Diane, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, yay. So now we're going to actually start, and we're going to start with our third slide. And this is going to be talking Diane, our incomparable ride manager. Go for it, Diane.
Just a summary. We host 3 rides a year. No Frills has already happened. We had 88 starters in that. We had 100 entries, but only 88 started. We're coming up on the big June ride and the national championship. I kind of want to reiterate that we're hosting the nationals, but we're also holding our regular OD ride in conjunction. So Thursday, the 9th will be the national championship 55. Friday will be our normal open division 25 and 55. And on Saturday, we will be running the 100 national championship along with our open division. And I want to clarify some misinformation that's out there on Facebook. The national office keeps saying that the open 100 will start shortly after the national 100. And I've had some questions where people are sponsoring, they're doing the open and they're sponsoring a junior in the nationals. It will start at the same time. And then in October, we host Fort Valley. We will still be doing the Triple Crown this year. If you are in the open division or national, those miles will go towards the Triple Crown if you are an OD member. And we are sanctioned by all of those organizations that are listed there, ARC, ECTRA, OATS, and SERA, Southeast Endurance.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Now we're going to go. We know that you have been conditioning and getting your horse ready, but after our discussion last night, we decided y'all need to listen to Terry to talk about.
And before Terry goes, let's just remind them that we're doing it slightly different, that we'll answer questions as we go instead of
Yes.
waiting to the end.
Yes, and so, but we decided we want to let Terry get started with this.
So if any of you have attended our previous webinars, we have talked about the need for acclimating your horses to things they have to step over we've made suggestions as to how to accomplish that if you don't live in the wonderful area of the Shenandoah Valley that is rocky and fun. We've talked about using cavalettis as a tool. We've talked about riding in forest areas that have roots. We've talked about using ring work where, just getting your horse used to moving in and around things to make them supple. If you have access to a hill, a mogul, anything that changes elevation, by all means use it. I think at this point in the game, we're 4 weeks away from this national championship. So any of us that condition try to sort of peak at that point. So just beware of bringing a horse to this event that's tired. So within the next week or so, you should be tapering off your conditioning program and just working on keeping you and your horse loose. At least that is my plan. Anybody else on the panel have thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Terry, is that at this point, the thing is to not overtrain, because we've got 3.5 weeks to go and you've done your training. And if you haven't, your horse is going to be fine. And I think the big difference now is that this weekend is going, for the first time, it's going to be 90 degrees. And so you don't want to go out there and pound the pavement, but you are actually going to be the weak link here. For most of us now, if you're in the Southeast, it's different. But for most of us, we haven't had 90-degree weather yet. And so we would like to fan ourselves and go inside and wait till it cools off. But that's not how it works. This is the time for you to go out either with your horse and go climb some mountains at a nice leisurely walk, but be outside in the sun. And Terry's going to talk a little bit later about electrolytes and taking care of yourself, but you are now the weak link, because a lot of times the weather gets hot for the first time on Old Dominion week. We creep up to it and we have 70 degrees and 80-degree days. And then kablam on Thursday before the Old Dominion gets to be 90 degrees. So this is the time for you to start saying, I need to really be concentrating on my drinking and eating. I need to really be concentrating on being outside in the sun, because we're just not ready for it right now. So taking care of both your horse and you in the heat means that this is not the time to back off on heat training. It's the time to back off on conditioning. And another thing Terry had said earlier is that the hardest thing is the mental conditioning, because you know how to ride your horse and you know how to ride. And even if you know how to take care of yourself, the hardest thing about the Old Dominion is knowing when you're going to have to pump yourself up to pump your horse up. It's usually around the 60-mile point, and you're feeling pretty bleak because you're pretty tapped out and you've sort of run out of your own electrolytes and you haven't been drinking as much as you should. And you're feeling kind of weak, and your horse is like, oh, is this a bad time? Should we stop now? And that's when you have to start singing. And that's when you have to start talking to your friends and saying, we are having such a great time. Because once you get over the hump and we're always talking about the Old Dominion, about the 100, but it counts on whether you're doing a 25 or whether you're doing a 50, is that once if you're doing a 25-mile ride and you turn the corner and you've only got halfway to go left, you've got 13 miles left, and then 12 miles, you're counting down, you've done the hardest part. And that's when you have to start psyching yourself out by saying, I've got this. This is something I can do. And it's really the mental preparation that even when things hurt and things, when you feel woozy or you think when things aren't going right, you have to be tough mentally to say, my horse is feeling great, so I'm not going to be the weak link.
Exactly. Does anybody have questions in our audience there?
Well, while we wait to see if any questions come up, Stag wanted to point out that there is an occasional rattlesnake on the side of the trail or on the trail, especially going, is it up the power line towards the North Ridge? So
yeah, so the power line, it basically, I've seen them when we've gone down there to train, and I've seen them during the ride. What they like to do is in the heat of the day, they kind of warm themselves on the rocks. So you just have to, the point of this exercise is pay attention to what you're stepping on. So, you know, you're always looking at the ground. Is it a rock? Is it you know, a rattly thing? Is it, you know, a hole? Is it whatever? So as long as you're looking out for them, then you won't end up stepping on one. And they don't like us as much as we don't like them. So I've always had them slither away whenever we came upon one. But it's the woods. There are things that live out there.
Mhm. There are bears.
There are bears.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any questions that would relate, I guess we can move on to trail. That work for
Okay.
everybody? All right, let's move on. Let's move on to trail, and this will be Lonnie.
So, and can we actually go to the first loops? Does that work? Because so the deal with the trail, so what she's going to do is put up our loop mileage for the 100-mile ride, but we also do have the loop mileage for the other rides as well. And the again is if you're going to approach this ride, it's you do it one leg at a time. You do it one vet check at a time, and you ride each one carefully. And the way these work is 2 or 3 slides down, we'll have this totally awesome elevation profile, which shows you the hills and things like that. But the way this trail is laid out, and the way a lot of trails are laid out, is because the vet checks have to be down in the flat area because you have to be able to get the vehicles in. So you will go out and on the first leg of the Old Dominion, it's 16 miles into Birdhaven. And yes, there's rocks everywhere, but there's also lots of moving out places. So the whole idea with the Old Dominion, and Stag always quotes Matthew, is never hurry, never tarry. But the concept is if you have 2 steps of flat area to trot, then you need to trot. You need to not walk. And I was always told to go as quickly as you can, which means that you're pretty much going to be walking and trotting. There's not going to be a whole lot of cantering until you get further along on the trail. But don't be sauntering because you're going to need that time later on. Is one of the things Diane's going to talk about, is that we do have closing times. Is you have to travel a certain amount of speed to get into the vet checks in enough time to get out of the vet checks and enough time to get around the whole trail. So the idea is that the first 6 miles of the Old Dominion is it's not flat by any means, but it's good moving out. It's got lots of open trail where you can trot, you can canter if you want to, you can move along. And while Stag made it very clear on our last meeting that this is not a time to hurry, you don't want to blast them out because it's going to be very, very humid in the morning. It may not feel hot, but it's going to be humid enough that you need to be letting your horses warm up, and don't be moving too fast, but you need to move fairly steadily, because at the 6 mile point you do your first climb, and we'll see our elevation profile. And it's a pretty steady climb. And this is one of the things, again, that Terry talked about earlier, is that if you don't have a good climbing horse, you need to be prepared to give way, because this is a long uphill climb. But the deal is there's only one climb before the first vet check. You go up, and then you go up, and then you go up some more, then you go up some more. But you only go up once. You're moving through the rocks, and you have jogged pretty steadily for the first 6 miles because you need to hustle. And then when you come to the hill, then you start walking, and you walk up the hill.
Mhm.
But even if you're in the rocks, if you find there's 10 feet there that's soft and open, you do a little jog, and you keep moving, because your pace will never stay steady, as you're going to be dropping from 2 miles an hour, and then you'll move up to 5 or 6 miles an hour. And then there's going to be a couple places where you can move 8 miles an hour, but you need to keep adjusting your speed all the time for the terrain that we have. Because yes, we have rocks, so you cannot dispute that, is that you have to walk carefully through the rocks. There are, of course, horses who can trot through the rocks. There are horses who are magical and float through the rocks without problems, but a lot of us don't have those. So on every single one of these loops, you'll have the first 6 miles is fairly trot, and then then you'll go up a long steep hill, but then you've got a long downhill, and you come into the vet check. Same thing happens again. You go out, and you've got several miles of good trotting. So take advantage of that. Trot along, move along, because you're going to need to bank as much time as you have, because when you come to the second hill before going into Laurel Run,
No.
it's pretty much a doozy. I mean, it's a spectacular doozy. And it's a beautiful, gorgeous doozy, but you won't be making much time on it. So again, you go up a steep hill and you go down quite a steep hill, and then you come down into Laurel Run. And so while you're on the hill, you're not going to be making very fast time. So when you come down to the bottom of the hill going into Laurel Run, you do again need to roll along. We're not talking cantering or galloping unless you're good to it, but you need to move, and you'll pretty much have a good idea of where you're coming in you'll know when you're coming into the vet checks. They don't pop them up on you. I mean, so you'll know when you need to back off and walk in, because the deal with the Laurel Run check is that we don't have crews in there, especially in the morning. We don't have crews in there, so it's in your best interest to not come roaring in with a horse who's hot and gasping, because it's going to be harder for you to cool it off without your normal crew there for you. We have lots and lots and lots of people there to help. We have lots of people to hold your horse, and there's water there, and there's tons of supplies, but you won't have your regular crew there. But again, the same thing happens to that for Laurel Run to Bucktail, is you go over another pretty doozy of a mountain. And so the entire day you need to, when you leave the vet check and your horse has had a rest and your horse has had it's rehydrated and it's refed, that you need to keep a pretty steady pace, because you're going to come to a place many, many times along this ride, whether it's the 50, the 25 or the 100, that you have to walk, and you're going to cut down to a mile and a half an hour, and you're going to be thinking, I'm not going to make it. But as long as you've got a couple hours in the bag, as long as you say, I still have, if I keep going with this pace, I've got a couple hours that if I have a total disaster, I can still make up the time. And that seems to me to be the deal with the trail, is that there are many good areas. So use them to your best advantage, because the hills will slow you down.
And Lonnie, I want to interject. We have some of the biggest issues, people going from Bucktail to Waits. We now have the mileage right, but a lot of people come into Waits Run comes up so quickly. They come into Waits Run way too fast, and it's a gate and go. You've got to get your pulse down to 64, and then you have a 10-minute hold. We have a lot of issues of people having a hard time getting their pulse down there. One, it's hot. It's probably like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but also because people come running into it, not expecting it to come up so quickly. After that gate and go is the infamous Mail Trail climb.
Yeah, so I think what Stag just pointed out was that so Waits Run is, and I don't even remember the mileage, we could add it up, but it's roughly 50 miles, something like that. And or maybe it's like 53 miles, is you know when you've left Bucktail.
Stag was talking about the into Laurel Run, into that hold. What happens into the Laurel Run hold is you've done this awful climb, and your horse is, I don't want to say demoralized, but it's not their favorite thing to do. They're climbing for several miles, and then they're picking their way across the spine of the mountain, which is not fun for them either. And then they hit an open road and they go, Yahoo! And they all want to go. But there is a gradual incline into Laurel Run. So that is something to be very aware of, that you don't come in hot. You have to realize that even though this is the first time you've seen wide open flat road in a couple miles, you want to be cautious going in there. I think the same thing happens to you at Waits Run, because you get this beautiful wide open road and it seems like you should fly, but pay attention because it is a gradual incline. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, oops, now my pulse has to be down and I have a 10-minute hold. So those two places are, just be a little attentive to your mileage and what's happening with those inclines. Sorry to interrupt, Lanny.
No, I think you're perfect, because I think Waits Run is one of the big bugaboos. And when you leave Bucktail, because you're at 46 miles, is put your thinking hat on and say, I've got 7.2 miles till I get to the next vet check. It's a no crew vet check. There is an astounding team of volunteers there, and they have water tanks, but you are out in the sun, and it's pretty much the hottest part of the day. So when you figure out what, because when you come into Laurel Run, if you're familiar with the trail, you sort of have a clue because you know it's a gravel road, then you make a left turn. And when you make that left turn to go up into Laurel, you know you pretty much want to walk it in from there. Waits Run will sneak up on you in a heartbeat, and you have no idea because you're going, like she says, you're going up this beautiful grassy wide fire road, and it's just inviting you to move along. And everybody's looking at everybody, and everybody's trotting along. And then all of a sudden, in front of you, you see the vet check or the gate and go. And the trick is it's a 10-minute hold, and you don't normally you wouldn't pull your tack in a 10-minute hold, but sometimes you've got to do that. If it's a hot day, you will not recover if you don't pull your tack. And there are people there to help you, and they will hold your horse for you, and they will untack for you, and they will put the tack back on for you. So it's not that you're on your own, but it's a whole lot easier if you saunter in. It's a whole lot easier if you figure, okay, I know it's 7 miles to go. I'm going to do that in like an hour and 10 minutes because it's uphill, or whatever your timing is. Stag probably does it in 42 minutes, and he can do it. But the rest of us is that you figure I've been going for an hour. I have left Bucktail. I need to be watching very carefully because I need to start backing off. Because if you come into Waits Run and they will feed you there, they have everything you could possibly need, but you can't argue with the fact that it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's super hot. There's no shade anywhere, and you've been going up a hill. So truthfully, you want to ease into Waits Run because by the time you see it, it's too late. So watch your time. What you know it's 7.2 miles. So when you leave Bucktail, ride well for an hour, but then start backing off because you're going up a hill and you need to. And we untacked last time. I mean, we definitely had to untack because we ride a heavier horse. When you come in, you can stand there all day long putting water on them. Number one, they don't have unlimited water because they have to drive it in on the fire road, but it's not going to work because the water's sort of warm. So you just pull your tack. They'll help you put it back on. Give your horses a break and then go again. And the reason we don't discount the rest of the trail, but the way this trail is laid out is you leave Waits Run, you go to, and when you get to Little Sluice, you've done pretty much. So when you come into Big 92, which is a 72-mile point, you've done all the climbs. You've done all the big climbs, and we'll look at the elevation profile in a minute. But we all know that if you can make it to Big 92, you've got 30 miles left of pretty good visibility, beautiful fireflies, spectacular. It's getting cooler, and the air is wonderful, and you can move along. So we don't really pay much attention to the last 30 miles because you've done the worst of it by the time you get to Big 92.
Well, and the trail that you're on after Big 92 is all stuff the horses have seen. So they know exactly where they're going and they're hauling it. So once you leave Laurel Run, you're backtracking. And that little piece between Big 92 and Laurel Run is majority of flat road. So even if it's dark, the horses are feeling fresh and they're realizing they're heading back. And so you can zip along that piece. And then after Laurel Run, it's everything they've seen already. They know where they are. They can smell the way home.
Yeah, let's look at the 55-mile loops. Because again, this is just obviously half the ride, and that's one of the things we didn't say about the 100 is that when you leave Bucktail and at the 46-mile point and you go up to Waits Run, and before you get to Waits Run, there's actually a physical place where you turn south, and your horses have been pretty much going away from home the whole time, and you may not know where home is, but they know where home is every step of the way. And if you turn them loose, they could find their way home. And there's a place before Waits Run where you turn, the trail turns right, and the horses are like, I got this. And so even though there's a lot of rock in between me and home, they are being dragged home by the force field from that point on. And that's a pretty spiffy place to be, is to say, okay, I'm not fighting the force field. I'm now working with the force field to get home. And then the 55 again,
I apologize, Wani, for I missed my edit for vet check 6. That should be vet check 3.
Oh, cool. Well, that's right. There you go. So again on the 50, and one of the things that we have on the 50 is that we do have people have trouble making the time because you just need to bustle along. And that just means that you need to walk and jog, because it's, you may think I'm doing well at 6 miles an hour, but then you're going to come to that first hill. And the first hill is not even the most exciting one. So you're going to come to the first hill, which is you can pretty much walk and jog and climb up to the top of the first hill. And it's, I think you go like 11 miles, something like that. You come out to a radio tower at the top. You got these astounding views of Virginia, where it's all the pastel colors, and it's absolutely gorgeous. There's water tanks at the top, lots of water tanks at the top of the first hill, like at 10, 11, 12 miles, something like that. And then you go down this very, it's several miles of gravel road. And again, that's something where you do want to be careful, is you don't want to be just blasting down a semi hard packed road back into the vet check. You want to actually ride your horse. You want to actually collect your horse and use your skills, and don't just let it thunder along heavy on its forehand. But so going into base to vet check 1 is the exact same thing you do on the 100, is you go out about 6 miles and you want to kind of putter right along there. And then you go up a very steep hill and you curse and mumble and swat flies and things like that. You go along the top of the spine and you're thinking, when are we going to get to the radio tower? When are we going to get there? Once you get to the radio tower, everybody has a huge drink and sponges off. And then it really is downhill into the vet check. You go through the vet check and do the exact same thing. You backtrack a little bit, you come back out. When you're going down that switchback gravel road, you're zipping down the switchback gravel road. Keep an eye out to your left. It's about 2 switches from where you get down towards the vet check. You're going to come back out of the vet check, come back up that gravel road, and then peel off, which will be on your left as you're going down the hill. So just keep an eye out to your left where you'll see the trail going off. You still have to go down to the vet check, but then you come back out and the trail will go back off into the woods back to the north. So again, the same concept is there, is that you'll go into the vet check, you come back out, go up this fairly spectacular climb. And it's not even the going up that makes you want to curse. It's the coming down that's pretty exciting. But then you come down into Laurel Run after thinking that you've just met your maker. And again, just as Terry was saying, when you come into Laurel Run, is you come down the hill and you hit this gravel road. You think, woohoo, I got this, and you'll kind of roll along and you'll do maybe a couple miles along this gravel road. And you're thinking, when are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? You come to a T intersection, turn left. I mean, it's a road, it's a clear intersection, and your vet check is very close. It's like a quarter mile up the hill. So you probably want to walk in from that point. So when you get there, your horse is nice and cool and relaxed and is not puffing, so it can actually eat and drink and have a good time.
And it's 3 miles. It's when you get off the Laurel Run Trail onto the gravel road Lonnie's referring to, that you're going down, down, down. It's 3 miles of steady down.
So you don't want to saunter. I mean, you want to use that time, but you do want to come in slow to Laurel Run or to any of these vet checks. Do you have thoughts about that, Terry?
There
I
is having
was
done
just
this
gonna
ride.
interject.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Diane.
No, I was just going to interject. Lonnie was talking about it making it hard to make time, and that is when it was a 50, but the mileage was 52.3 or 4. We've added that half a mile, so you now have the time of the 55, and it's 52.5 mile or 52.8 miles, whatever. So you actually have an extra hour and 15 minutes now, and that has really improved people being able to make the time on the 50.
Right. Now, the very cruel joke to all of this is that when you are arriving at Laurel Run, the pull from Birdhaven to Laurel Run is challenging. I'm going to use that word. I have seen people whine, cry, throw tantrums. It's an interesting piece of trail. It's not easy, not for the faint of heart. But now, in order to make that 55-mile distinction, you see the people waiting for you at Laurel Run, and you have to go right past them for, what is that distance, Diane? A mile?
1/4 of a mile. What? No, 1/4 of a mile to get clothespin.
A quarter of a mile. It feels like 10 miles at that phase of the game, because you see them waiting for you. Here's this oasis of comfort, and you have to go past it to get your little marker. and then you can come back to those people who are waiting and wanting to help you. So at that point, you know, it is a very cruel joke, but that little extra piece gains you some time that will help you. But that piece from Birdhaven to Laurel Run, just make sure that you are using all of your wits and managing your horse properly on the conditions that you're on. There's a lot of goat path type things. You know, I've been on that trail with newer riders, and they're like, how is this even a trail? Because you're scampering from rock to rock. If you're on a goat, then you will have no problem. If you are on a hippopotamus, it makes a whole different experience. So, you know, you have to manage and coddle just a little bit more to get through some of that stuff. So just make sure that you are alert and aware.
Just to stop for 1 second, Peggy Thompson, you have your hand up. If you can put your question in the chat, we would be glad to address your question or your comment or whatever you have. But I know that you're not able to come off mute.
Yeah. And one of the things I have to say is that up to this point, all our webinars have been all about, you can do this, this is fun, this is fun. And all of a sudden we're kind of talking like it's kind of tricky, but this is the ride that we live for. I mean, this is the ride that is worth it, because if you gave us a choice of going to the Goethe 100 in Florida, that's okay, but you're doing a lot of miles in the sand, making little loops and coming back to the same vet check, and you don't see the countryside. You're just marking time. And we live for this ride because you really feel like when you and your horse do it. When you come across the finish line, if you don't cry, there's something wrong with you, because your horse has just done something amazing. And so while we keep talking about how hard and rocky it is, we can't wait to do it. I mean, we can't wait to go there, because when you're climbing with your horse, you're thinking, you are amazing. It's not like you're not going fast enough, or my left leg is starting to hurt, or this and that. You're thinking you are a god. And so if you look at this mileage here, so the first miles, just so you have a clue, is that the mile into the first vet check is 16 miles. And those of us peons usually do it, what, Terry, in like 3 hours? How long does it usually take us?
So I've actually been studying Diane's analysis of 5 years worth of how long it takes people to travel this trail. Those who go very, very fast do it in just under 2 hours.
Wow.
That's not me. That is not me. I'm saying there have been people. And then you have another group who take as long as 3.5 hours. So
That's a big
yeah,
spread.
absolutely. I think the average, like there's the majority of times that I've done it in the 2 to 2.5 hour range, depending on, am I on a horse that is younger? Am I on a horse that is newer? Am I on a horse that is more fit? That is where I judge whether I'm at that 2 hour or 2.5 hour.
And
So
if you look at
that's usually my time frame there.
And if you look at the analysis that I sent to Terry, you can also look at the comparison of weather. The years that we had low humidity and 80 degrees, the speeds are much faster. The years of 99 degrees and 90% humidity, the speeds, when people have taken care of the horses and gotten through the ride, the times are much, much slower.
Okay, I'm going to take a full advantage of having you guys in front of me, because I'm planning to ride the 55 in my Arab. What for vet check 2 and vet check the other loops, how long would you say again for timing?
Well, see, and I think this is critical to know, is that I think the big thing on this ride is the loop from vet check 1 to vet check 2. And you go out there and you think, I've got 17 miles, and you think, shoot, I should be able to do that in 3 hours easy. And I don't know about you, Terry, but it will take you 4 hours no matter what you do if you have wings of gold. And you are, because you are climbing, and so don't let it shoot you in the heart when you keep looking at your watch and thinking, I'm never going to get there.
Okay.
So Terry, I would say that it almost always takes me at least 4 hours to do that loop, even though you've got a pretty fast moving out few miles before you get to the mountain, and you've got 3 miles of potentially fast moving out at the end. But I think it always takes me 4 hours to do that 16.9 miles. How about you, Terry?
So that loop, now that we're saying it, let me get my manual, and I will look at that loop. The average times for that loop were anywhere from 2 hours and 45 minutes. These are not my times. These are ride records. 2 hours and 45 minutes to 4.5 hours. So it depends on, where you use your time. The climb, if you're on a horse that is a super climber and you train on, steep hills all the time, and you can scamper up that long climb, that's the person that's going to be the 2 hours and 45 minutes. I don't live near the mountains, so I take my time climbing up that big long climb, and it's a long climb, but worth every minute of it. But because by the time you get to the top, you're like, yay, we did it. In the middle of it, you're going, what was I thinking? Why did I sign up for this again? But then you realize, oh my
And
gosh.
the times that Terry's reading off, that first time she's giving you, that is the pace time of the winners. That's the pace time of the winners and the winners that have come close to breaking the course record. So when you
Right.
take 4 hours to do it, don't be discouraged because someone did it in 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah,
It's not
no,
gonna be-
that's not my point in bringing up the times. Those are actual ride times. So that's what I'm saying. Somebody who has a horse that can run up a mountain, and that climb it's very vertical. So if you have that capability, that's fantastic. I don't. So, knowing that, I have still completed the ride on time. I have never not completed this ride. So,
So we
Wait,
have
don't-
several questions about all this, if you guys want to answer some of them now.
yeah, sure. Let's do it.
So one is, how do we ensure that food that our horses can eat are at the away vet checks or food stops if our horse is on a special diet?
So what
I'm
will
sorry.
happen?
Can you, I missed it a little bit.
It says, the question is, how do you ensure that food that our horses can eat are at the away vet check or the food stops if our horse is on a special diet?
Well, the only vet check that you don't have, that you cannot let crew go to, is Laurel Run. All of the other vet checks, your crew can follow you around. At Laurel Run, we provide Triple Crown Senior, Triple Crown Complete, wet beet pulp, hay. If you have a horse that requires special food or is a picky eater, you send out, like we do at No Frills, you send out a bag. A gallon Ziploc baggie or 2 gallon Ziploc baggies of that special food, and it's in a bag with your number on it. So when you come in, you find your bag, and then you'd have that special food for your horse. All the other vet checks, you're allowed to have crew. And if you're doing the 50 and you don't have crew, you can go to Bird Haven the night before and set up your whole crew area with everything you need. And it is guarded overnight by the station head, Jen Smith.
We have a
The
question.
other thing I do is I always have pockets on my pants. And my horse is a very food motivated fellow. I always have snacks, always. And all the horses that ride with me know that I am the snack lady. So every few minutes, I'm always feeding whatever the snack is. And I change the variety of snacks from vet check to vet check so that he's not only getting peanuts the whole ride. Sometimes it's, you know, carrots. Sometimes it's the apples that he likes. The next time it's fancy cookies from the store. Then, you know, he likes sweet potatoes. So like each time I have, you know, my pockets are bulging. I look like I have some horrible disease because I always have lumpy thighs from all the treats in my pockets. But that's a way to get them stuff that keeps them happy and motivated the entire time. He never has anything less than A's on gut sounds.
At least I think
Question of, is there natural water on the trail?
gobs. Gobs.
Lots and lots and
And
lots.
it is marked with either W's or with blue laminated signs that say water with an arrow pointing towards them. I'm going to address one of the questions in the chat, and that is there a way to see my ride times for each stop of each of my attempts and or completions? That would all be on your rider card. If
Mhm.
you did not get your rider card when you did it, you can send me an email and I will try to go through the piles of past rider cards. If you tell me what year it was and try to find your card, and I'll scan it back to you. And the other question is about if you don't send everything from the barn to each check and there's a torrential downpour, how do I keep my horse from getting cold? I don't know if this is referring to you're not going to have crew going to each vet check. I'm not sure how to answer that question because we're not going to have a bunch of blankets there, but usually people are there from other crews that if they saw your horse was cold would offer you a blanket to put over the horse until their rider came in. I mean, usually people are very good about that.
There's another question about how's there a way to get crew out to Birdhaven if the crew person doesn't drive?
Hit your
You
ride.
go
with
to the
your-
ride briefing and you raise your hand and you say, "Hi, I'm Sally and I need a ride for one person and 6 buckets out to Birdhaven. Will anybody take me?" And I guarantee you'll have at least 10 vehicles that are headed out to Birdhaven.
And you can do the same thing the day before, jump or ask for a ride over there to set your crew area up the day before.
Yep.
And just hit your ride. A lot of people do that. People sometimes don't want to unhook their trucks, especially if we've had rain and they're afraid they might get stuck, and they'll hit your ride with someone who's unhooked and they do the same thing the
Mhm.
next day.
Yes, this is a very supportive community. Nobody wants your crew person stuck in base camp and you without them.
When you're going to Birdhaven, when you turn off Orkney Springs Road and turn up Alum Springs to go to Birdhaven, there's a store there that has ice, so you can stock up on ice every single time you come past that corner. We do want to support the local
Mhm.
people, but they make a point of supporting us by getting a lot of ice in. So going back to the 55-mile thing, Sonia, is that, say it takes you 3 hours to get into the first vet check, you're fine, and then you have a hold. And then it takes you 3 hours and 45 minutes or something to do the second vet check. Don't fret, because you'll see the last 20 miles. So from Laurel Run back to Birdhaven, there's no major climbs. And then the last 6 miles is one party city. I mean, it's got a few rocks and a little bit of mud, but it's got a ton of water. And so the last 20 miles are handed to you. So don't be fussing. Don't lose sleep and fuss and get ulcers because you're not moving as quickly as you would like to between vet check 1 and to vet check 2, because turning around and coming home is easy. You got it.
Thank you,
And
Lonnie.
And
Now,
the other
that
thing,
said-
the other thing that will help you know that is when we get to the slide about the close times, as long as you get in there and you get your pulse down anywhere before that close time, that's telling you have the ability to still finish this ride.
That makes
And
sense.
we'll talk about
Right.
those close times when we get to that slide.
Thank you. My mare does not like, thinks climbing mountains is dumb. So I was wondering myself.
Yeah, don't fuss.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Because then
well,
yeah.
so my advice then is keep her favorite goodies in your pocket to keep her motivated on that climb up to Laurel Run.
Okay.
Because I happen to have dragged somebody up that climb one year, and the woman was crying and the horse didn't want to climb. And so we were, here, have a carrot, like literally, pulling her up the hill. And she just kept saying, I'm gonna quit, I can't do it after this. And I said, but guess what? At the end of all this is the hardest part of your whole day. And at the end of all this, you get a buckle. And it was like, oh, shiny things. Okay, I can do it for that. And sure enough, she kept going and got through, and has thanked me no less than a half a dozen times since for reminding her that, at the end of this was that shiny buckle. So as long as you just keep reminding yourself there is an end to this climb, and we'll keep going. Again, having ridden this ride with folks who've not done it before, the pull from Laurel Run to Birdhaven, there's a lot of road, and having spent the whole day picking along, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, you get this long stretch where it's go, go, go. And you are tired and potentially hot. Don't be tempted to lollygag along, because there are sections toward the tail end of that trail into Birdhaven where you will have to walk again. So move, and just keep drinking, keep squirting your water bottle on your horse and you, and then you'll get back into the woods and have to pick along again.
Thank you.
So the difference with the 25-mile trail here is when you're on the 50 and you leave your third vet check, you leave Birdhaven and you go home, it's pretty rolling, wide open, and very trottable the whole way. In order to get the mileage for the 25-mile is you do have one more little hill in there. So you'll when you do the 25-mile, you'll go along flat for about 6 miles. And when I say flat, it's a little rolling, but you can trot. You'll go along flat, and then you'll go up this spectacular hill with great views. And then you come down this long gravel road back down into Birdhaven, but we can't send you straight home because then you wouldn't have enough miles. So we do send you back towards camp and then have you go back up the hill you went before, cut over onto a power line and come back down. So there is on the 25, unlike on the 50, there's one more climb. It's not a major climb, but it's a climb. There's one more climb on the way home just in order to get enough miles.
Okay, I think we're ready to go to the next slide. And this is the one that Lonnie's been talking about and excited about.
I just love this slide. This is just a spectacular slide. And so if you look at it, and again, it's again on the left side, you leave camp and you go over a little hill, and then you go up over the climb. And yeah, it's pretty spectacular. And the vet checks are all down at the bottom. So you see that you'll see the 20-mile check, the 20-mile point there. So you'll go up the mountain. I mean, this is, but the point is there's a big hill before the first vet check. You leave the first vet check, and then there's another pretty dang spectacular hill. And then, okay, another hill is because your second vet check is at 32 miles. But once you get to you'll leave Waits Run, which is 53 miles, something like that. And you'll do have that climb, that last sort of double peak or triple peak there. It's not quite as steep, and it's not as bad as everybody says. And it does get dark on you there. That's the trick on the 100, is that when you leave Waits Run, you think you're doing okay. And then for those of us who are normal peons and not the speedsters, is about halfway through that last triple peak there, it gets dark on you. And it's very beautiful when it gets dark. I mean, the frogs are croaking, and seriously, the fireflies are out. You can see a lot of pretty amazing stuff, but it is dark and you're doing a lot of climbing. But once you get over that last climb and come down, you come down into Little Sluice, and you have to go up a gravel road into Big 92, but then it's very, very doable. So you see, we essentially have 4 major climbs, and you can count them. You get to Birdhaven, you've done 1, check. I've done 25% of my climbs. And you get into Laurel Run, check. I've done 2. So you can. It's very, very doable if you just know the statistics and say, I've got 1 more climb. Okay, now I'm into Big 92, and I can scoot on home. And the fun thing is, I was having a little trouble interpreting the slide or the thing at the bottom that said pace, because I think it should be turned upside down. But I think the significance of it is how many minutes it takes you to do a mile. So if you're going very fast, it takes you 5 minutes to do a mile. And if you're going very slowly, it takes you 25 minutes to do a mile. And so that means you're going 2 miles an hour, essentially. So the pace chart corresponds, of course, exactly with the upper chart. So every time the mountain goes up, your pace goes down to 25 miles an hour. And I think the key to that is that, and you, of course, you can see where the holds are because that's when it drops straight down. And I like Jamie's question. Oh my gosh.
I
this is
know,
awesome.
right? How dark is it? Hmm.
I don't want to know. It's,
If the moon is out and the stars are out, it's pretty bright. And if it's overcast, it's pretty dark.
we have a lot of trees. So it's, I don't know if you've ever ridden, when you ride Vermont is, I mean, because when you're in Florida, I like to ride without lights because lights are annoying. Lights are annoying to the people around you, and lights are annoying to the horses. I mean, it's better to ride without lights. But if you ever ride in Vermont, which is a very, the whole thing is trees. The whole thing is trees. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. All you see is all these runners bobbing along with their lights. But so in Vermont, you have to use lights. In the Old Dominion it's nice to have them. It's nice to have, and again, when you ride at night, like all these experienced people are, is you have your headlamp, but then you also have a hand lamp. And like she says, if the sun is shining, you're okay. Because if you're having to use your light, you're going pretty slowly. You're not going fast with your light. You're picking your way through the rocks. So it's better to not use it. But if you definitely want to have one with fresh batteries, and then you want to have a backup in your pack, a backup light in your pack, and then you also want to have a hand lamp in your hand or in your pocket. So if you have to check a trail marking and all your lights have failed, you have backup lights. But again, the point of the pace is that you are not, when you go to Vermont or you go to Florida or you go to Big South Fork, you sort of have a pretty steady, I'm going to average 7 miles an hour during this entire day. I'm going to do that. You can see from this pace chart that you don't, is you go between doing a 5-minute mile to a 25-minute mile, and you do it constantly all day long. And so that means that there's going to be a lot of those 25-minute miles out there. So you need to bustle right along. It doesn't mean you're going to be going yeehaw clap, with your elbows flapping, but it means, again, if you have 10 or 20 feet of trail in front of you, you need to be jogging. And if the person in front of you is not jogging, go around them. Do not let somebody else set your pace. Is you don't want to be caught by the time because somebody in front of you is not prepared to do the steady pace. So if the person in front of you is walking and the trail is open, say, do you mind if I go around? Is that okay? And scoot, go. Don't let somebody else set your pace for you.
Also, Jamie's going back on the question about riding in the dark. How dark is it? The trail is marked now. It will be marked with very bright LED lights that we have just made that make them brighter. They're marked every 1/10 of a mile when you're on road. And when you're in the woods, they mark them where you almost can ride light to light. LED light to LED light. And this year they're going to be lime green so you can tell them apart from the fireflies.
Yes, they're very bright and very fancy. So we'll be able to see them. I usually, just back to the light question, on the roads, I don't usually use a light. What I've gotten in the habit of is putting just a red light on. And that way, once I go from the road to the woods, just the red light just tells me or gives me a warning if there's any kind of a branch anywhere near my head. But you can't really see. And, it's that whole trust your horse thing. They can see far better than us, and any lights that you put on kind of mess with their vision. So I try to keep my lights turned off as much as possible.
Yeah,
And
'cause
I'm glad Terry mentioned the red light, because I have found a green headlamp and it seems to not give you the seasickness, and you don't get
Right.
all that bobbing up and down, and it gives you a little more light than the red one does. And I
It does.
really like that over a white light.
But so what we're saying is that it's going to get dark on you between when you leave Waits Run, and you're going to be in the dark by the time you get to Little Sluice. But again, your last climb, that little triple whammy climb is going to be before you get down into Big 92. And then after that, it really is gravel roads with a couple of little detours around it. I mean, yes, there's stuff between Laurel Run, but by the time you've survived the first 4 major climbs, is the stuff that's between Laurel Run and Big and Birdhaven is kind of like, yeah, whatever. But so you won't be needing your light all the time because as Terry was saying, is if you're trotting along pretty good on the roads, then you are you're outriding your light anyway. So just leave your horse alone, let your horse see it, and let your horse find it. And a couple of years ago, I had the great pleasure of drag riding the last 32 miles with Tom Hutchinson. And we started with fresh horses, and the weather got cool and the weather got nice. And it was pretty funny because we were having a hard time keeping up with. So obviously we're following the last riders. I mean, we're not following the front riders. We are following the last riders. We were having to hustle and trot and canter the whole time to keep up, to even come close to touching the last riders on the 100. It's that much fun to come in. It's that much fun to do the last 30 miles because you are going home, the weather's cooling off, and your horses are like, I am so out of here. And as with fresh horses who are experienced horses, we had a hard time keeping them in touch. It was pretty awesome.
Very cool. Okay, I think we've talked about trail. Unless there are any questions, Lisa, I'm gonna go on to the next slide, which will be tack and
I am
equipment.
not seeing any additional questions.
Okay, I'm gonna move on now to tack and equipment. And that would be Lonnie, I believe.
And I'll start out because we've already talked about tack and equipment. We've already, with 3 weeks to go, you're not going to change anything. So one question we were asking ourselves as we're going through this is what extra information do we have that's specific to this ride? Or because obviously what's different from this ride than from Fair Hill or from et cetera, is that we do have, I think the key is a lot of steep downhills. And it's not just a 50-yard downhill. It's like a holy crapola, couple hour downhill by the time you get to the bottom. So the things that they're showing you here is some of you will ride with a crupper. There are probably, okay, you have to have a breastplate. I mean, your horse may be able to ride without a breastplate, but a breastplate will a couple times, at least on the first 50 to 60 miles, make a big difference for you. It's kind of like if you go to Tevis, you better have a breastplate. It's going to go really badly if you don't. On this one, unless your horse has the perfect back and the perfect saddle, a breastplate will really, really, really help you keep in place and give you something to hang on to while you're climbing up the hills. The next question is breeching or a crupper. And I haven't actually used a crupper, but I know a lot of people do, because there are a couple of times, if you have a horse with low withers, there are a couple of times when you're going down a hill on the first, but coming into Bird Haven, but more so coming into Laurel Run, where you're climbing down and you're on a trail. When I say you're climbing down through the rocks, you're not climbing down. Well, okay, you are, but you're dropping down sort of from rock to rock, and you really, really do not want your saddle to go forward. That would be like a real bummer. So on some of our horses, so we started using a breeching. Steve Rojek started this, or at least we became aware of it when Steve Rojek started doing it, and he carries it with the Sleipner gear in his company, but there's a couple other companies that do it. And it is, of course, it's not something you want to start now with only 3 weeks to go, but it's something to think about, is that if you've got a combination of a breastplate and breeching on your horse, and I've never had a horse who didn't adapt to it, it makes you feel like king of the world, because your saddle, you don't have to worry when you're going down the steep hills. And so, because one of the reasons why a lot of people use breeching is because you start getting armpit rubs. And we've all had to deal with those, and we've all had to deal with it. It's not, I mean, so girth rubs are one thing. Girth rubs are something that you have to watch out for. And Terry has a system that she uses for her girth, and we have a system that, so personally, we always use the neoprene girths, or we started really using the shoulder relief girths that are cut back away from the armpits. But what a lot of us have had trouble with is armpit rubbing, which doesn't relate to the girth. I mean, if you're trotting if somebody were trotting next to your horse and your horse is starting to say, I'm getting these thickened, red, painful armpits, it's not your girth. I mean, you stand back and look at it, and your girth is 12 inches away from your armpit. So we're all still scratching our heads about this. One thing that Diane has come up on, and we use a lot of for that, is we use a lot of Alu spray, the aluminum spray, because it helps keep it dry. It helps sort of form a bandage on there and keep it more comfortable. I know that Joni Buttram down in Alabama, she turned us on a long time ago, is because another so either you want to reduce the inflammation that they get just from having chub rub, just from their armpits rubbing as their front legs are moving, is she turned us on to, there's a product that, and we just get it at Walmart, but you can also get it online at Amazon. It's a product called Smooth and Shine, and it's a hair polish. It's not for me, obviously, because I don't even wash my hair, but it's a hair polish that when you, it's like super show sheen, because you do have an option of show sheening your horse's armpits, but is that really going to last 4 hours into the next vet check? And Smooth and Shine is just one of the many options for hair polish. It comes in this little 4-ounce bottle or something. And if you put it in your hand and then smear it on your horses up in the armpits and then down along the girth, is that it really, really reduces the chafing and the rubbing you get, because that can, I mean, Dawn Hilliard is the classic example of somebody who just got chafing and rubbing and ended up just having to ride without a girth. And so that's something we'd all rather not do. But so that's why your normal tack for normal flat landing is going to be a little trickier than you're, because you're not going to be going flat. You're going to be climbing up some steep hills. So you really, really need to consider a breastplate. And then you really need to consider some sort of braking system. And then as far as the bridle goes, I just have an interesting, so for me last year riding the Old Dominion is we were doing the 25 and we came out of the pipe. We left Bird Haven. We climbed back up the mountain. My horse really, really, really wanted to get home. And we turned onto the pipeline, which was sort of, you come out of the woods, come out of the rocks, and you're in an open, it's a rocky area, but it's an open area and it's obviously facing towards home. And he just blasted off. He just bolted off of there and dragged my whiny little patootie down those rocks at 5,000 miles an hour. So that's when I started riding with a totally different set of hardware. So make sure you have enough brakes. Don't be all nice and kind and sweet to them and give them something gentle, because there's some times when you want to have some serious control. Do not go down this hill fast. Don't follow those other horses. If I tell you to stop, you need to stop. So this is not the ride to be all sweet and cuddly and say, I'm just going to use the nicest bit I can, because they will take advantage of you when they see an opening. They'll like, I want to move now. And you're thinking, I'm going to die now. But so those are just some of our thoughts about the differences in tack here.
The other is for this ride, and any hot ride, I usually do this, is not only starting with all the tack clean, but I will often have a saddle pad or a fresh girth at each of the holds, so that if the pad comes off and it weighs 100 tons and is soaking wet from the sweat of the humidity and everything, or the girth comes off and it's got sand or dirt on it, instead of trying to get it clean, just throw it in the bucket and bring out the fresh, clean, dry one. And the horses really appreciate that.
We talked last night briefly about just doing kind of a all over head to toe, head to tail equipment check. I've noticed, my guy is getting a little more fit, dropping a few pounds. I ride in a Ghost saddle, so one of my panels needed to be adjusted as he's getting more fit. So just some small things like that. It's just a good time right now to assess and make sure that everything is in good working order. Nothing is, wearing through. Nothing worse than getting to a ride and having your stirrup leather wear through and having to MacGyver something new. So just doing all those checks is a good idea.
And I think for this ride, the other, and Terry, we've talked a lot about this, is having those things in your bag like zip ties, baling twine, where you can fix tack out on trail if it breaks.
Definitely.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on from tack and equipment to shoes, boots, and farrier. And I think this is the start with Diane.
Okay, Stag already put this in the chat box. For this ride, as we've talked about the rocks, they eat the shoes. First, we have a requirement for this ride is you must have all 4 feet protected, whether it's boots, shoes, pads, but you have to have protection all the way around when you start the ride. I, for almost any other ride, carry 1 easy boot. Most people for this ride carry at least 2 spare tires, 2 easy boots, in case you lose a shoe on a loop. Now, the good part about this ride is we have 1 to 2 farriers at every single vet check. We have, I think, 4 or 5 hired, and they basically leapfrog from vet check to vet check. Bird
And
Haven
they're
is,
good farriers.
they're very good farriers.
They're very high quality farriers.
And so like Bird Haven is extremely busy. There's almost always 2 there, especially in the morning. When you come in there late at night, there'll only be 1. But all you've got to do is get yourself to the next vet check with your Easy Boot, and they will get a shoe on. They are very, very good. And Terry can even tell you the story of them rebuilding her horse's entire wall with the,
Yep.
whatever it's called, the epoxy, and
Yep.
her farrier couldn't get it off after the ride was over.
We
So they-
went 2 full cycles with that thing on there.
So, you know, even if you end up with a lot of damage to the foot, they will do everything in their power to keep you in the ride and get a shoe back on and protect your horse. Many people pad, whether it's pour-in pads, for this to protect the sole within all those rocks. And anybody else can chime in there about the shoes and versus boots or.
And I think all that is exactly right. And absolutely, I always carry 2 Easy Boots because number one, if you haven't lost shoes before, you may not know that your front feet may be different size than your hind feet. So make sure you know what size boot each end of your horse wears, because usually you have to carry a hind and a front, or at least a size for the hind and for the front. But you definitely want to carry 2, because if you lose a shoe, you now don't have a spare. And it's when you're riding on the trail and you meet somebody who's lost a shoe and they don't have a boot, you're thinking, what were you thinking? I mean, what were you thinking that you're a long way from home? So you really need to, none of us on this panel are boot people in terms of we don't start with boots, is we may or may not have tried it, but we usually don't know. And I know a lot of people are very successful and a lot of people have done the 100 with boots of all these kinds here. So it can be done. I think everybody on this panel prefers to have a nail-on shoe with a little bit of traction. And again, pads are definitely your friend. You're probably out of options now as far as shoeing, but because you're usually dependent on your farrier schedule. But given a choice, this is when we would be shoeing right now, because we've got 3 weeks to go. And given a choice, we don't want to shoe in the week before the ride, because then they don't have the hoof mass. The shoe hasn't sort of stabilized on the foot, and they've managed to grow some hoof mass. Because going out there in the rocks is a different story. We always jokingly say there may be a rock with your name on it, but it's just a steady concussion. It's just climbing up and down the rock. So in a perfect world, I would suspect that most of us at least put plastic pads on the front, and may or may not pad in the hind. If your horse has great feet, then you want to this is the time to pad front and hind, because you've worked your whole year to get to this ride, and you don't want to be wiping out for a bruise. And one of the things that Stag said, I just saw the beginning of his quote or his question, is that when you come, so always be watching your shoes. So if you can't look down and see your shoes, if anytime you're going over rocks, make sure you're hearing 4 pieces of metal hit rock. Make sure you're not hearing click, 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 thud, click, 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 thud. When you come down on the gravel roads, ask your people around it, do I still have all 4? Am I still doing well? Or if you feel anything at all, stop immediately and make sure you have all 4 shoes, because it's pretty common to come off those hills missing short a shoe. And also when you come into the vet check, when you get off your horse, the first thing you want to do is look down, because you've got some time in there. You've got some hold time, but the farriers are usually pretty busy. I mean, there's usually a line, and as she says, we often have 2 farriers at some of the bigger holds, but there's usually a line of people waiting there. And what they do is they just take your number. They take your number, and then we collect at the end. They'll settle up on the money at the end, so you don't have to worry about carrying money with you. They'll just say number 127. I put a right front shoe and pad on and had a little bit of rebuild on the outside, something like that. So they take care of that. Then we settle it all up at the end. But when you first come into the vet check, you want to check all your shoes and make sure there's no sprung shoes or anything that's taken a beating that needs to be corrected. You want to know that before you head back out on the trail. But so what we're doing now is we've got 3 weeks to go. is this is when we want to be shoeing them. Now, you may not have a choice, but this is the prime time for your horses to have enough time for their feet to toughen up and to harden up and be ready for the trail.
Lonnie,
And
I'm gonna-
And
Oh.
another good idea is to have your farrier give you a full set of your shoes, so that if you come in with missing shoes, you reach in your box, you grab a shoe, you walk it right over to the farrier, and they don't have to resize anything or try and find whatever your fancy shoe is, and they can just slap it right on.
Terry, you took the words right out of my mouth, and because I carry 4, but when you grab that shoe, make sure if it's a front shoe you're missing, you grab a front shoe out of your bag, because your front shoe and your back shoe are shaped differently. And I want to go back to
Yep.
what Lonnie was saying about the farrier. The setup is that they'll tell you how much you owe. When they get back to base camp, they'll put your invoice in a pocket folder in the pump house. You're on the honor system to go into that folder, find the invoice, put your money in the envelope they will leave for you. And then that way you have squared up. Your entry or your results won't be sent into ARC until you have squared up with the farriers.
I'm gonna add something about boots. I've gone on a lot of training rides with friends who use boots and have used boots successfully on the OD 55 and the OD 100. Everyone that I know that uses boots successfully trim their own horses. I made a conscious decision that I did not want to learn how to do that. So that's why I do steels, because I did not want to have to learn how to be a farrier on top of everything else. I am old and it hurts my back too much. The other is, I know also there's a lot of new, maybe you're thinking about doing a drag ride, or maybe you're thinking about doing the LD and you haven't really been able to practice with boots yet. Coming to this ride is not the best time to practice with boots. I will tell you, I have seen people take boots off and hide them behind a tree because their boots are coming off. This is where you really need to be practicing ahead of time. Just some things I've noticed around the trail and such. Okay, I'm gonna move. I think we're time to move on to the next one, and it is food. And Terry, you're always talking about food.
I ride to eat. That is the whole goal of any adventure, is the food that is awaiting you at the hold. At this point, everybody has figured out, some sort of electrolyte protocol for their horses. We're not talking about what kind and how you should electrolyte. What we're promoting here is that you should have a system and you should use the system. Find what your horse likes, find what electrolyte protocol works. We always have backups of things in our kit. If somebody's getting a bellyache, or if somebody is, not wanting to eat, or, it's not a problem I have very often. My horse is always hungry, but, whatever your horse's things are that may crop up, I just find that for the longer distances, what is helpful to me is using different mediums with which to deliver the electrolytes. So I know kale and pectin is a really popular one, applesauce, baby carrots, all very popular. But the same rule applies for horses as it does for you during the course of a 100-mile event or the course of a 50-mile event. There's only so much peanut butter and jelly you want to eat. At some point, that is no longer going to be appealing. So if you keep coming at your horse with the same nasty thing over and over and over again, at some point they're going to become belligerent about it. So we change up. We sometimes do baby food carrots, sometimes do the kale and pectin, sometimes use papaya juice, different little things so that we're offering variety. We talked last night about offering different kinds of food for your horse at each vet check, just again to give them the variety and the calories. They're working so hard. You want to make sure that they're interested in whatever it is that you are offering. and that, you know, if they want the neighbor's food, by all means, trade bowls with the neighbor. We just want to keep that food going in. We were talking about for the rider, it is really, really important that you focus on you as well. This is kind of that concept of being on an airplane. If you don't put the oxygen mask on, you are no good to your partner. So maintaining food going in all day, water going in all day, electrolytes going in all day. We love to tell the story. For those of you that don't know, my father is Bob Walsh. He's a member of the Old Dominion board. He has been competing in this sport since Times Square was a prairie. And he was always horrible about eating and drinking during a ride. He was miserable about it. And he was doing a ride. It was a 50, and it was hot, and it was at the old location for the Old Dominion. It was at Leesburg. And I was waiting for him at the finish. And here comes someone ponying a horse that looked very familiar to me that didn't have a rider. Come to find out, he had made it 1 mile from the finish and fainted on someone's front lawn and was being hosed off by the homeowner waiting for an ambulance to come pick him up because he had gotten dehydrated. So this was, you know, big lesson to me that you must make sure that you maintain your own health and wellness throughout the day. I find that ingesting small amounts throughout the day goes way better for me than waiting till I get to a vet check and then, you know, having a smorgasbord of food. Lanny had a really good suggestion, you know, for the crew members. Don't hand somebody a full sandwich, you know, hand them a bite at a time. If you are a helper, if you are a crew person, offer small amounts, and then it's becomes something that you can think about easily and you can get down. And again, for yourself, having that variety is helpful as well. We all tend to eat foods during a ride that we may not normally eat. So, you know, plan to have an odd assortment of things at your disposal so that you can eat whatever tastes good and feels good in that moment, because it will change over the course of a day.
Because I think one of the things we use a lot of that we don't normally think about, because we don't use it in is sodium. Is you burn a lot of sodium because we spend all of our lives hopefully cutting down on the amount of sodium we eat personally for ourselves. I mean, you because you don't need that much salt. I mean, what is it normally? We're supposed to get 2,400 milligrams or something of sodium a day. And supposedly, if you're an ultra runner and you run a 50-mile run, and again, I would probably use twice this, but the average ultra runner uses 9,000 milligrams of sodium to run a 50-mile run. So obviously, we're not running, but we are out there in the sun and the heat, and we're exercising. And if you don't keep your electrolyte intake up, then you will feel either queasy, you'll feel barfy, you will feel fuzzy headed, and particularly you'll feel super weak. You'll feel like, and if you do get to the point where your sodium gets low enough that you start getting goosebumps, that's a really big warning sign. If you're climbing up the hill and you start getting goosebumps, your sodium is seriously messed up. So avoid that. Just avoid that. And so you can go to any biking stores, have the best supplies all. And so most of those, like if you think that Gatorade is an electrolyte drink, it's not sufficient, because Gatorade has something like 80 milligrams of sodium per 8-ounce cup. So you'll have to drink like, 3.5 quarts to get up to enough. Whereas we use Succeed caps. They have electrolyte capsules for humans, and you can put 4 of them. You can roll them up in a little baggie and put them in a piece of your pack, and they'll sit there for years without getting beat up. But like one Succeed cap has 325 milligrams of sodium. It also has potassium and some other stuff in it, but it's got 325 milligrams of sodium in this one capsule. So you don't have to drink 4 glasses of Gatorade to get the same thing. and a lot of the gummy bears and things like that, they're really helpful because they have some electrolytes in them, but they don't have the volume that you need. So eat all the stuff, like Terry says, eat the stuff that you don't like you normally never eat bologna, or even lunch meat. Lunch meat has very
Salami.
yeah, very high sodium. I mean, if you just look at the packages, because you think you can eat pretzels, but if you flip over the back of a bag of pretzels, some of them have 140 milligrams per serving, and some of them have 600. So pick and choose. But what you're really going to have to eat a lot more than all the things that you normally avoid during the day. You're going to need them, and if you start feeling woozy, then you need to somehow get some electrolytes into you, and on a steady basis.
Right. And drinking, don't start drinking just the day before the ride. You need to be well hydrated. And, that's the pro and the con is, being hydrated makes you feel really good. Yes, you have to pee every 5 minutes, but that is the lesser of the two evils. So being hydrated is super important.
So one of the questions is what should the crew be doing? And if you are the luckiest person in the world, you have at least 2 people on your crew, and they are designated. One person takes care of the horse, and one person takes care of the rider. Because unless you're one of the really, really good riders, or unless you're Terry or Stag or something like that, you're starting to come unglued after about 45 miles. I mean, you might think that you're doing fine, but you're not doing fine. So
No, I come unglued.
I mean, you just the wheels start to come off a little bit, and you're not riding. So
Yeah.
when you start to get weak, your riding goes to pot. So you're not helping your horse. You're riding too hard to the left. You're riding too hard to the right. You're not helping your horse's back. You're not helping its hindquarters. So you want to be as stupendous every second of the day that you can. So your core is good. So you're sitting up and supporting your horse rather than being a sack of potatoes. So what your crew needs to do is, when you come in, if you are the luckiest person in the world, then you have crew to take care of your horse. This is not always what happens, but the horse needs to be attended to every second of the hold. That doesn't mean you need to pick at them. They need to rest. They need to rest and be left alone, but they need to be stared at the whole time. So when the horse says to you, is there more water or is there more food? You want to be ready. If the horse says, I have an itch, or I have a hole here that I need dealt with, or my saddle's starting to bother me, but somebody needs to be staring at the horse the whole time and saying, I'm going to take him over here and let him eat some of this grass, because there's some awesome grass here over at Bird Haven. I'm going to let him graze for 20 minutes. But the person who's taking care of the horse, therefore, is not taking care of the rider. And the rider, in a perfect world, would come in and know that their horse is in good hands, know that the person who's taking care of the horse is attentive, knows the horse, and when to give the electrolytes and when not to give the electrolytes. They know not to let the horse step on the rein and break the rein. I mean, they know the person with the horse, they trust them. So then the rider, what should happen is that when the rider comes in, you need to automatically, they're dehydrated when they come in off the trail because they haven't been drinking enough. And so, but number one, you need to refill the water on their saddle or what they're carrying. Do not let them go back out without refilling the water bottles or their water pack or something, because they need to empty everything they have between each loop. But what Terry was saying is that if you're coming in and you're kind of dehydrated and you're a little queasy, but not quite, but you're not quite 100%. If somebody hands you this gorgeous deli sandwich with dripping with corned beef, you're like, I can't cope. I mean, it's just, I can't cope. It's too much for me to think about. Whereas if somebody hands you a chicken nugget, you're like, oh, I can handle that. I got this. And it's probably got enough sodium to kill like a family of weasels. But so if you're going to be the crew, number one, you need to know where absolutely everything is. So the rider says, I broke a clip on my breastplate. You need to know exactly where that clip is at all times. Or if somebody says, I'm starting to get a rub on my leg, you need to know where the tape is so you can wrap that up so it doesn't get any worse and the rider starts riding crooked. But the main thing is you need to, when you hand them food, and it may or may not be fruit. I would suspect a lot of us don't eat a ton of fruit on these rides because we're a little cautious about fiber and sugar and things like that. But again, if somebody's going to hand you probably like a toasted cheese sandwich would be heaven, but a piece that's about 2 inches by 2 inches. You only want a small piece. You eat it. You're like, okay, that went down. It had a lot of sodium in it. I'm good. And then 5 minutes later, and you hand them another piece. So you want to keep handing like bacon. Wouldn't bacon be awesome on a trail? I mean, would that be heaven? Because it's a ton of sodium in it. Yeah, I mean, if somebody gave you bacon, I'd be like, okay, I'll eat 4 of those. But you want to keep handing your rider little pieces of food, and it's annoying when your crew says to you, what do you need? because you're thinking, I cannot think. I cannot compute. I can't make a plan. So you take care of my horse, and then you just hand me food and drinks. And if you hand me a bottle of water and I chug it, that's great. If you hand me a bottle of Diet Coke and I shake my head, okay, put it away, grab something else, grab some orange juice, grab something. But what you need to do is, as the day goes along, your rider is going to start not being able to make the right decisions anymore. So it's your job to pump them back up, is to give them, as you don't want to eat a turkey dinner and then try to go back out on the trail and not have it back up, but you want to get quite a few calories in and then restock the saddle with the water and the food, whatever's going, as they go back out. But a lot of us, it does help to sit while the horse is being taken care of, and you put your feet up and you rest. So then you had 20 minutes or 30 minutes of eating and drinking, and you are on fire and you're ready to go back out and tackle the next loop of trail because your crew has taken care of you.
Yeah, and one really good thing is, those that know me know I am a planner. I'm an over planner. I'm a planner to the max. I write down instructions, so my crew knows what to expect. They'll know that at a certain point I'm going to start speaking gibberish, or at this point in the day, this might be when things start to get cold. Therefore, this is the hold that you need to think about having the fleece and having my jacket ready. This is the area where, we're going to want more food or less food, or, this is what you need to think about or watch out for, so that there isn't that, what do you want? What do you need? And my brain is shutting down. I've already told them 5 possible scenarios and they're ready for it. I also, I pack a little box that is just things for me, that has all my dry clothes in it, all of my snacks that I want, anything that I need to go on my saddle, the Motrin, all of the creams and rubs and bandages and anything that I could possibly need. And they will put that box next to a chair. And, once they've handed me the first couple bites of food, they can leave me to kind of forage in that box for whatever I'm feeling in that moment. So my things aren't jumbled up with things that are there for the horse. So there's some forethought put into your packing, and pre-communication with your crew will save. I was talking about it last night. We've all seen the spousal abuse that happens in a vet check, where somebody is flipping out on their partner because the partner's supposed to be reading their mind and they've not communicated what they want. And and so if you make some effort to communicate ahead of time, A, you're not compelled to yell at people. B, they're not asking so many questions. C, everybody has a good day, and they'll likely come back, which is nice. So the next time you'll have crew again.
And actually, something that may go with the next slide with this strategy, but one of the things we talked about in the earlier webinars is, for some people, this is one of the first rides that they've done where all the check holds are not back at base camp. And that's a little alarming, but you've got time to do this. So what we do is that, since we know that your first check is Bird Haven, and there is a possibility that your crew will get lost or run off to Mexico or do something and won't be there to meet you. Now, if that happens, you're actually okay, because all you do is you look forlorn, and everybody will provide you. Everybody will provide you with food and electrolytes and blankets and hay or whatever. But so you have a chance. So that your first check is at Bird Haven. So what we do is we pack a bucket, and it's a 5-gallon bucket with a lid on it, and you write on it Bird Haven. And if we've taken 2 or 3 horses, then we would say Bird Haven, this one is for Fuji, and Bird Haven, this one is for Flo. And so I have in that bucket everything he would want. And of course, not a spare saddle pad. I need a bigger bucket than that. But I have a gallon Ziploc bag of grain, and I have a gallon Ziploc bag of hay cubes, and I have a gallon Ziploc, whatever he needs that would make him happy, so I can paw around. And you may and like, we have a bucket, we've had a bucket forever, and it says Finish Line on it. And that bucket with a lid on it that says Finish Line, when we come across the finish line of the Old Dominion, you come down the driveway and you stop at those water tanks before going to the vet, It's got everything already that, so your crew is not scrambling around, throwing things from the truck, trying to find this stuff. Is that it's got at the finish line, it's got ice boots if you need it. It's got a stethoscope. It's got the electrolytes if you need it. It's got calcium if my horse is going to need calcium. It's got potassium if I need to get his heart rate down. It's alu spray for sure. So there's a bucket of things, that everything that I will need at the finish line to get my horse off the trail to the vet and completed. And it's all in one bucket. It's labeled. So you can do the same thing for Bird Haven. And you can do the same thing for Laurel Run, and is just say, okay, I'm going to be at Laurel Run and I want to make sure that he gets his own, he likes safe starch, whatever, or he likes this kind of feed, or she feeds Cavalor Fiber Force. I'm going to make sure that I take a Ziploc bag of that, and as many horses I have, I'm going to have enough buckets, but it's going to be written on the outside in big black Sharpie. So there isn't a lot of throwing things around. So again, if wherever you're going to a check, if there's a crew, they say, oh, look at here, that the side of that bucket says bucktail. I better make sure that that's front and center if I'm going to the bucktail vet check. So that's one of the things you can do to make your life a little easier is pre-plan. Because you are going to be doing so many different vet checks, and your poor crew is going to, the minute you ride out, they're going to sit there in the wreckage, which looks like Hurricane Maria just went through, and they're going to have to pack everything up. And if they don't have the time to do it, they won't get everything back into the same bucket. So you want to have everything as organized as possible so they can heave everything in the truck, drive to the next vet check, and be ready for you without losing half the stuff on the way. So you have 3 weeks to get your organization, because Terry uses lists, because she's got oftentimes riding with 3 or 4 or 5 different horses, and she might have 5 or 10 or 20 different people crewing for her. So this way, every single person is on the same wavelength and they've got it written out. But if you're not a list person, that's fine. Pre-pack your stuff now so you don't have to question. And then on June 2nd, you think, oh my gosh, I forgot a spare dry bandana. I cannot ride without a spare dry bandana. So then you stick that in the vet check, in your vet check bucket.
So we have a question about how realistic is it to do a 50 or 100 without crew?
I think this 50 is absolutely doable without crew. For myself, I don't know that I would feel comfortable attempting the 100 without crew. I just know me. I know my horse. I don't think it would be a smart effort for me. There are plenty of people who do it.
Because I think you never want to be at a point when your horse wants something and you don't have it. Is that, I don't care if you keel over and fall off a mile from the finish, but if your horse wants something, I want to have it there. So they need to get enough calories in, they need to get enough food in. Sure, you can graze along the way, but if you do that, you're not making the time you wish you were making. So it absolutely can be done. But if you don't have a crew, the same sort of thing is that, how am I going to get people to Bird Haven, is you can get stuff taken out to all the different holds and it will be there for you. And it's not the same as being taken care of and catered to. Terry and I like to be catered to. We like people to pat us and stroke us and tell us that we're doing wonderfully. But it's for the safety of the horse. It's for, without a crew, you can't have a drive saddle pad there. You want to have exactly what your horse needs at every moment to keep them smiling, because you'd feel like an absolute crumb if your girth was disgusting and nasty and you didn't have a way to clean it and you had to put it back on.
Right.
And
I
would
also
say
think it's
55
really important. I think it's really important to have that break from one another. You and your horse are so connected and in tune to one another during those loops that being able to walk away from each other for the 40 minutes, the 45 minutes, the 50 minutes, however long it is, and just take a little breath. I find that the partnership is stronger for that little break.
And I will say that the 55 is very doable without crew, because you can go to Bird Haven, which is only by road 6 miles, and set your whole crew area up ahead of time. We open the gates the night before. You can take all your own stuff in there. And then after you're done with the ride, you can drive back over and get your stuff. We also have, and this is for anybody, but for the 55, especially if you don't have crew and don't have a way to get your stuff over there, you fill a bag, just like you do at No Frills for the away vet check. You fill a bag with what you need for your away vet check, and it gets put at a signpost that says Bird Haven. That will be taken out there, and it will be put between two trees that is marked with a big sign, crewless riders. Now, that's not clueless, that's crewless. And there will actually be volunteers hanging out in that area to help those riders they come in, because you've identified yourself as a crewless rider. Now, the 100 people have done it. We actually have a category called the cavalry. And people have done it that you don't send anything, you have to use everything in nature. But we've had a lot of people complete this ride in the cavalry division, which is you carry everything you need on your saddle. So it is doable, and you can send a bag to each of those vet checks if you are crewless. And there'll be, you'll have to find it when you get there. But you can do it. It just takes a lot of pre-planning, and your stuff would be sent out and then brought back after the ride's over.
Talking about utilizing nature, what is the etiquette if you have to pee while on trail?
Do it fast. I mean, that's the gist. You just want to pick a spot when you're semi alone, go quick and scamper on down the trail.
Cool.
And make sure when you get back on the horse, you're going in the right direction.
There's also
It's
a
happened.
question. Yeah, believe it. There's a question about where do you get calcium and potassium for horses?
They sell wonderful bottles of things called CMPK and calcium gluconate and no salt. Those are good sources of all of those things.
Mary Coleman will be at the Old Dominion ride, and she sells CMPK, calcium gluconate, and also no salt.
Yeah, and the deal with the no salt is that it's the no salt is you can get it in any grocery store, and it's potassium. A lot of times what we'll do, because you can get, I don't know if you can get CMPK, you can get calcium gluconate at Tractor Supply or anything, or you can probably get
Get
it on
CMK there too, yeah.
CMPK.
You can get CMPK there as well.
Yeah, and so Bob Marshall, the vet from West Virginia, has figured out how much potassium is in a bottle of CMPK, and he says you're getting a massive amount of potassium there, so you're really doing well. But what a lot of times we'll do is if we have the heavier horses, more heavily muscled horses, and if they're not recovering well, then what we'll do is we'll have in all these buckets that go to all the vet checks is we'll have a 60 cc syringe and put the CMPK in it, and then dump a bunch of light salt in on top of it, or no salt in on top of it. But it's very easy to do, and it's you figure out what works best for your horse, what dosages work best for them. And certainly there's ways to calculate it, but calculating doesn't work because every day is different, every mountain is different, and every weather is different. So you just sort of get by how much they're eating, how their muscles are feeling, that kind of thing.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? I think so. Okay, the next one is ride strategy. Now this is Terry's truck getting ready for ride strategy, but I think the next one I'm going to move on just to show the rest of the panelists. This is what Diane's been talking about, so we want to have some time to talk about that. I don't know where you would like to start. Do you want to start here or at the picture?
Well, either one is fine because they're all sort of wrapped up in one another. We talked about these loops and these distances earlier. We sort of gave copious amounts of advice on how to manage each of the loops. What we want you to note is that there are closing times for each of the vet checks, which means you do want to look at the clock as you are traveling, and know that if you do not make it into that hold by that time of day, then you have no opportunity. You cannot make up that time elsewhere. So we do just want you to be paying attention to the clock as you're moving. In terms of strategy, in
Let me-
terms
let me
of, yeah, sure, Diane.
I just want to, for those that have never done the OD, to explain that these have been calculated over years of those times that Terry was referring to earlier, the fastest time people have come in and the slowest time people have come in. And this is based, and it's not actually, if you look carefully, it says last or latest pulse time. That
Mhm.
means you have to have your horse pulse down by that time and then add to that the 40 minutes or the 50 minutes. And that's technically the close time. But this has been calculated on the slowest horse coming through this hold and still getting across the finish line in time. So it's been
Right.
calculated over 4 years of comparison. I also, for those that are on this call that have ridden this ride many, 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 many times, please take note of the highlighted yellow. These are changes in the hold times. Our hold times used to be straight down 45. We had some feedback of asking about the possibility of making the earlier hold times in the cool part of the day shorter so that the hold times in the heat of the day could be longer. So I consulted with Nick, our head vet, and he agreed that this would be a really good strategy. So any yellow highlighted, and I'm really pushing this for those that are used to our old hold times, are a change in the hold times. Birdhaven's 5 minutes shorter, and on the 55, Laurel Run's 5 minutes longer. For the 100, the real heat of the day is bucktail, so that's where we added the 5 that we took away from Birdhaven.
Yep.
So that is, but the last pulse time is truly, if you don't get in by then, you really cannot cross the finish line if you moved forward, and you will get pulled from the ride. It is not a choice. It's not your choice to go on. The vets will actually pull you from the ride if you pulse down after this time on this chart.
So this is something that actually you want to carry with you, and maybe you don't want to carry the whole list with you, but what we do, and I'm sure everybody does this, is that take a Sharpie and you have a lot of arm on you. But if I were going to ride the 50, I would write in a line across my arm. I would write 16, which is the mile into the first vet check. I don't care what the opening time is because I'm never going to beat the opening time. That's not relevant. I would put 16, I would write 40, and I would write 11:15. And since I don't write vet check 1 because I know that's the first thing, but that means it's 16 miles into there. It's a 40-minute hold when I get there, and I better be there by well before 11:15 because I've got to get my pulse down. Then on the next line on my arm with a Sharpie, I'll write 17, and I'll write 50 minutes, and I'll write 3:45. But you don't want to be taken off guard by those closing times, because if something goes wrong, say you lose a shoe and you have to lead them in because your boot won't stay on or something like that, but you need to keep track of what is now called latest pulse time, but used to be called the closing time, is that's non-negotiable. So that is the pressure to get in there, and it won't be a problem for you unless something goes wrong, unless you go off trail a little bit and have to come back, or unless you lose a shoe or something happens. But you need to carry those numbers with you and look at them all the time. And if you say, I am 3 hours ahead of them, I am golden, that's a great feeling. But if you're not 3 hours ahead of them, you need to know if you need to hustle to get in there.
Right. Yeah, that's very good advice. And, with regard to crewing strategy, I think the fact that any of us are on this webinar right now means that we're already a step ahead of the game, and we're planning. Making some kind of a plan, organizing in some fashion. We had sort of the soup to nuts discussion last night of all of us organize differently. My method is literally, I have a manual. Okay, all of my things are written down, my lists are there, because that's how my brain works. If you're not a list maker, don't make a list, but you are planning. make some sort of advance set of piles, if that's your thing, buckets, if that's your thing. Nothing worse than getting to a vet check and not having what you need, getting to the ride and not having what you need. So pre-planning all of those things will make your event that much more enjoyable, because you will know that you have all of the things for your horse, you have all of the things for you. Anybody that's helping you knows what you have and where it is. You know, whatever your organizational method is, just have one. That's the key to this whole thing. When you have so many moving parts and you're trying to get things from place to place and be successful at it, there just has to be a plan.
All right. Are we ready to go to the next slide? It sounds like it. Okay.
I
Things
think
unique,
we're good.
things
So-
unique to OD besides our rocks, Alani.
And so these are, most of us have been to the Old Dominion, and we talk about the rocks forever, but I wanted to think about what are the things that we do as a group. The Old Dominion is a group made up of 200 or 300 members, and some of them are riders, some of them are not riders. We're all just
Lonnie,
believe.
I don't
Yes.
want to interrupt you. We also have extras, but I have a feeling you can
Yes.
combine both. Okay,
Yes,
fabulous.
we're going to clump up things unique to the Old Dominion. So I just wanted to think about some of the things that make us way fun and worth visiting. Is one of the, and these are not in any particular order. These are just things that we sort of talked about last night. One of the things we do have is the map, and the is a capital letter and map is a capital letter. Is that a group of people spearheaded by Lenore and Diane Hypes have made a trifold map of the Old Dominion Trail, but the significance is it has on it the directions to where you can go to train on the trail, the places where you can camp. You know, it's if you drive to Bucktail, you can park here overnight and you can ride this section of trail. So it's a way to really get familiar with how to get around the trail and how to, at what sections that you're able to ride, what sections are not on private property. So, and that's available at the Old Dominion store. And it's a truly amazing thing because we have it in a couple different sizes. So you can, yes, carry it with you, but you'd probably want to just blow it up and stick it on your wall and pet it periodically. But it's a way, it's a resource. So this trail is not so foreign to you. Another thing we have, obviously, that is more special for us than anything else is these webinars. Is that this is something new that Sonia started doing last year, and we've had the best time ever putting these webinars together because it makes us think about what do we need to do as riders, what works for us. But it's been so much fun for us to put these webinars together and share with people things that, you know, because a lot of people on the first ones were saying, well, I didn't know if I wanted to come, and we're trying to make it. And so these are all available on, we have a YouTube channel. Is that right, Sonia?
That
We
is
have-
correct.
So she'll send out to all the people ways, you know, how to access all the webinars that we've done during the season. So that's pretty cool. One of the things that's very near and dear to my heart is our vet team. Is that we have usually for the June ride, we have a team of 10, 11, 12 veterinarians who are chosen for their experience and their wisdom and their compassion to the riders and their ability to keep people going, because the point of the veterinarians obviously is to keep the horses safe and have as many people finish as possible. We want as many people to finish this ride as we can possibly have, and the veterinarians will give you advice and tell you the things you need to do to make that happen. Another thing that people call the Old Dominion is the Old Dominion is jokingly referred to as the Beast of the East. And it's not just because it's hard, it's because it is a challenge. It's not something that you just go and do casually without thinking. Is I think the whole point of this conversation today is that we're talking about preparing, is don't just show up, but think about what you're going to need to do to make this successful and make it fun and not make it just kind of a long haul. Is what can I do to feel really amazingly accomplished at the end of the day, whether I'm doing the 25 or whether we're doing the 55 or the 100, every single one of the rides, when you finish, it is something that lives with you forever because it's not easy. It's something that you have to plan for and you have to attempt and try. And we don't always finish on the first try or the second try, but it's hard enough to make it stick in your brain for the rest of your life as something you really did that was amazing. Because another thing about the Old Dominion is the level of organization. Is Diane has been managing the rides for, we've had, a series of, I think we're up, I don't know how many rides we've done, whether we're at the 40th or the 50th ride. We've been doing this for a while, and Diane has organized all the things that we've done for the past 40 years. And so we have a tremendous ambulance team, and we have a tremendous radio team, and we have, the food team. I mean, it's so the level of organization we have is pretty amazing. And the way we can distribute information. I mean, we have our website, we have lots and lots of paperwork that gives people information on just how to drive to the vet checks and all that kind of. I was trying to think of what makes this 100-mile ride different from all the other 100-mile rides you've done. I mean, because you've been to Ohio and you've been to Vermont and you've been to Big South Fork, and again, it's because it's a point-to-point trail, so it changes your whole attitude. Is that you start it out in the morning and you don't get home until you come to the end of the ride. And that's what makes it different than most of the rides we have these days is it changes your strategy, and it changes it. So it's basically you and your horse going out there to attempt this thing. It's not like, I'm going to do this loop, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to go do another loop and then sit there. I'm going to do it's you need to plan to make this ride successful, to get the two of you all the way around the trail. So that's one of the neat things about it. And then the last thing I thought of is that, of course, we have great, awesome awards, because we have belt buckles for the National Championship 55 and the 100, but also for the Open on Friday, the Open 55 and 100, and that's pretty darn spectacular. So those are the things I thought about that are unique to the Old Dominion.
I realized, Diane, you were going to talk about this. Do you want to add anything?
Well, the only other thing that unique is the fact that we probably go through every single weather from the beginning to the end of the ride. It will start out probably in the 60s, sometimes in the 50s. It will be 95 degrees in the middle of the day, and it has been known to drop 40 degrees around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We had one year where a thunderstorm blew through and it went from 99 degrees down to 55 degrees.
Oh,
We might have lost Diane, but that might have been also the year that we had hail. We had torrential rains, pseudo floods. Yeah, but that you need to be prepared. I've been accused of packing as though I am taking a trip around the world. You pack for every possible kind of weather for you and your horse, because if you heat up in the middle part of the day, and then you could be really, really chilly at night.
okay. All right, I'm going to move on. We basically did cover this. This was extras that we're going to say, and Lonnie did that fabulous about. And then this is we hope that you can come view, see this view taken by Becky Pierman. She will be our photographer again this year. If you're riding the Nationals, I believe she does a special portrait with you with your horse with a bouquet
She does,
of
and
carnations.
it's fantastic.
They're beautiful. So we hope that you come enjoy that. And you'll get to see the amazing ride camp. I remember the first year that I drove to Old Dominion and I saw the Old Dominion base camp, and it's just shocking. It's a sight to behold. It really is. And I'm going to move on, and I think, and this is volunteer.
As we talk about the weather, or we didn't talk about weather, as we talk about world.
Diane, it's really hard to
10
understand you.
Our last 3 years, we have had the perfect low humidity, 80-degree weather. So
Don't hex us. We want that again.
Yes, we
I-
do.
Don't talk about it.
Good. And then we had put up a slide about volunteering, and there is still the No Frills link. It's obviously finished, but the National Championship volunteer link is still there. And Diana, I submitted mine today. And then,
So this, somebody mentioned in the chat about making sure that the rider has fun and that they don't get to the vet checks without them. It becomes, I'm not sure what distance your rider is doing. If they're doing the 55, then the crews all go to Birdhaven and they stay at Birdhaven while the rider goes up to Laurel Run and comes back to Birdhaven. If your rider is doing the 100, the crews end up in an informal road rally. Yep. Okay. If you're doing the 100, it becomes a little bit of a thing because, they all sort of pack up and end up driving that path from one vet check to another vet check in a little bit of a caravan. And then there's the jockey for what they all think is the best parking spot, and the crews end up having, little parties in the vet checks because there is that whole concept of hurry up and wait, because, they're all rushing to get out to the next vet check that takes them 20 minutes to drive to and you 4 hours to get to. So they end up making friends with each other and chatting, and but there is, a small sense of NASCAR going on while they're getting from vet check to vet check. That it's going to
And-
be hard for crews to get lost.
But let me speak to that also. If you've never come to
Uh-oh,
this,
we got the rules.
if you've never come to this ride, you will be given driving directions. It is good if you've never done this to have a co-pilot. I know of somebody who ended out down in Wardensville while their rider was at Bucktail. And of course, everybody jumped in and helped Holly out and got her everything she needed. But if you have a co-pilot, they can be reading the turn-by-turn directions to you while you're trying to get to Bucktail.
Right.
very cool. Okay, so we had our call for volunteers, and then if you've done any of our webinars before, these are our resources that we put up before, just a smattering of things that we think are good. And that's basically the end. Lisa, do we have any more questions?
I do not see any more questions.
Fabulous.
Everything's been answered. So,
All right. Do we have
All
any
right.
final? I guess we'll see everyone at the Old Dominion.
Do we want to see you there?
Yes, we're looking forward to it.
If Heather Wilkinson is still on, I would suggest she email Lonnie directly with her question about what the difference is between the no salt and this KCMPK and all those other things. That's she was asking about, and that's a pretty detailed answer, right, Lonnie?
Yep, absolutely. And I'd love to help. But they're also, if you go on the AERC website and you go under education, there's some articles in there. And there's this fantastic article by Donna, no, who's it? A regular person. Anyway, there's a super article on calcium, on electrolytes and calcium on the AERC website that I learned a lot from just reading it just a couple of weeks ago, because it sort of specifies the different kinds of calcium and which burn less if you're squirting them in the mouth, all that kind of thing. And so start there too, is look under education on the AERC website.
Okay. Fabulous.
That's awesome.
All right. So I
Thank you.
think we're finished. I
Thanks,
hope you see you at
everybody.
OD. Thank you.
There.
Hope to see everybody there.
Right, let's stop share. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We'll see you in June.